Entschuldigung.
Oh my God, no. Good photograph right now. It works both ways.
I think the first question you'd probably ask is, what is a poet doing talking in a chapel? And I think the only answer I can give to you is to quote one of my great favourite poets, the Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh. I think he's the best poet we've produced. And he was famous for saying, any poet worth his salt is a theologian. And I think what he meant by that was that both poets and theologians are in the business of asking about meaning, what our lives mean, what the context we exist in is all about. Now, I want this morning just to recall that for me, the most pressing thing, apart from thinking about girls, the most important thing when I was a schoolboy was thinking about what I was going to do with my life. In other words, thinking about what's known as vocation. And of course, the word vocation is a Latinish word, and the more common English word is a calling. And that's the word used in most Germanic languages. Norwegians talk about it, call, and berufung in German, and so forth, kochlan in Icelandic. It's all this word for call. But the Romance languages obviously use vocation, vocazione, vocation, and so on. Now, the vocation in English, of course, has two meanings. Certainly it had in my boyhood. It could go either way. It could mean a religious vocation, that is to say, to become a priest, or it could just simply mean what you wanted to go to do with your life. In other words, a distinction which is made very clearly in Japanese between tenshoku and shokugyo. One meaning a calling to be a priest, or a heavenly calling, the other meaning a calling to a profession. In my day, of course, the religious option was a very serious one because it was still very much in the air in the 60s before the vocations to, I was a Catholic, the vocations to the priesthood began to fall. It was a very serious decision because, of course, it meant celibacy. It meant that you were going to forgo any sexual relationships. It was a very, very serious one. I'm afraid I counted that out fairly early on. But I did feel very much a sense of vocation, but a calling to be a poet is what I felt. But then we have to ask the question really, what do we mean by calling? Does somebody come down? I don't think anybody comes down from the heavens and say, you're going to be a poet and you're going to be an engineer. I don't think it works like that. But how does it work? And when I thought about this, the more I began to think of an extraordinary phrase in the Irish language, which is guianoki. And it is related to vocation because the word vocation comes from vox, for voice, and we talk about things that are being vocal, we all know that. But the word vocal is a first cousin or a cognate of the Irish word focal, meaning word. And guianoki is borrowed into Hiberno English, the English spoken in Ireland, as the wind of the word. And I think that's really, for me, catches what the vocation is, with all the meanings of the wind of the word. Think about it, the wind as a spirit. The wind bloweth where the wind listeth is the idea of the spirit. And the word, of course, is the extraordinary logos, that beginning of the prologue of John, where in the beginning was the word. So I don't think it comes down just as a voice to you, but you do, the phrase guianoku means something picked up along the way. Something that you pick up in the process of hearing and so forth. And I think that's how vocation works. But I want to go on then to think about how do you pick this up along the way? How do you pick up this calling? A very important part of it for me were teachers, because no father can provide enough guidance, enough roles. You actually do, as you grow up, reach out to other adults, and it's often to teachers to find the role, to find the sort of model of what you might want to become. I, for my part, was very blessed because I had this dream from a very early age of wanting to be a poet. But my English teacher at boarding school was actually somebody who left teaching halfway through to become a professional writer. So it was wonderful to have the possibility there of a model, so to speak. Now, everybody I think that I've spoken to throughout life and said, why did you become an architect? Why did you become a lawyer? Most of them said, my favourite subject at school was, and that usually went back to a teacher. So I think that the teachers at school have a huge role in this influencing you and what you're going to do with your life. For me, I think the most important thing was something would give meaning to my life. I had to feel that what I did was meaningful, that it contributed some way to humanity, to the community, that I could say that my life meant something. Now the first thing is, for me, I had two things. I had wanting to be a poet, but the other thing that tempted me somewhat was acting. I had taken believe it or not, I played Joan of Arc at school. In Jean-Louis' The Lark for 2 hours on stage, and of course I was bitten by the stage bug. It's a wonderful thing, to have that feeling of have an audience in front of you and to be able to hold them enthralled, and also to keep people feeling, to keep them thinking, to keep them alive emotionally. That's a wonderful thing to do. But in the end, there was no competition. For me, it had to be poetry. And looking back, asking why, I think there was 2 reasons for it. The first was that there's a terrible death when the curtain goes down. Anybody who's ever acted will know that, and actors talk about it still. If you've acted in a part for 3 weeks, along with other people, and it's a very heated emotional relationship which you have with others on stage, the excitement of it, the living on edge with each new audience and so on. But finally, the curtain comes down each night, and then it comes down after the show, when the show ends. And it's a terrible, terrible hard thing to take. I couldn't face that. The other reason, I think, and the more perhaps deeper reason for it, was that I wanted to utter my own words. I didn't want just to be uttering others' words. I wanted to utter my own words and to have my own say, so to speak. I've also got to say now that there's something negative. A Jesuit I had at school defined vocation in 2 ways. He said there were positive vocations and there were negative vocations. And what he meant by that was to say that if I had a positive one, that's to say I had something I really wanted to do. An awful lot of people that were in my class had negative vocations. What he meant by that was, they said, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be this, so therefore I'm going to be that. In other words, you count out medicine, you count out law, you count and decide, I want to be an engineer. But I have got to say, at this age of my life, I now understand all vocations. I had to cut them out in those days because you were focused on one thing and you wanted to do that. Therefore, I didn't want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be this. But at the same time, now I think I understand. My father would have loved me to be a lawyer, and I couldn't bear the idea. I had read Shakespeare and the 7 Ages of a Man, and when you get to the lawyer, he's there in his pantaloons and he's good cap and lined. I could never ever be a lawyer after I read Shakespeare. But now I understand it, because when I go to a solicitor and I see him there being able to talk to, being able to solve problems, it's really about human relationships. I understand all vocations of this life. But I think it's natural when you're finding your own vocation that you actually have to cut out other things and be almost viciously against things in order to focus on your own vocation. Now, it's often interesting to ask people, many of you I think will know the Frost poem, the Robert Frost poem, that famous poem about the road not taken. You're going into the forest and you take one road, and you often think you'll come back to take the other, but you don't. You go on the one you did. But to ask somebody what the road not taken was is a very interesting one. I was asked it, I did a radio program one time when that was the subject. You had to talk about what you would have been if you hadn't been what you were, so to speak. And for me it would have been a doctor, because it would be helping people. And I say this with the knowledge that I'm the most squeamish person anybody ever met. I'm afraid of blood, I'm afraid of needles, I'm afraid of everything. But I think I would have overcome it if I hadn't been to become a doctor, because it would have had meaning for me. I would have been healing people. I think as a poet, I also hope to heal people. I asked I've got to say, really, probably what I enjoy most when I meet people now at this age of my life again, if I meet people for the first time at a dinner party or whatever, what I really enjoy is seeing people who are fulfilled and find wisdom and meaning in what they're doing. And it doesn't matter what that is. It just gives a glow to people's lives. It gives a sense of fulfillment. It gives a sense of achievement, which is always fascinating to meet and always interesting and absorbing. So I have another principle which I always ascribe to my best friend saying, and he always says, I said it first. We never can decide who said it first. But it's this, is that if you actually follow your vocation, if you take the risk, if you're true to your calling, you get everything else as well. And let me explain what I mean by that. I forwent theatre, although I enjoyed immensely being on stage and talking to people. But I got it all back, because now I give poetry readings. I give an hour's, it's a one-man show if you like, it's theatre. So having followed what I should do, I get everything back. I also loved music, and I've had concerts, I've had several concerts where my poems have been set to music, sometimes to jazz, sometimes to pop music, sometimes to classical music, so I've got concerts as well. I also loved painting, and I've worked with painters and done exhibitions with painters. I've got everything in life I ever wanted by sticking to what I was called to do. So my advice to you when you're thinking about what you want to do, it may not be what your parents expect of you, it may not be what your peers put pressure on you to do. Risk it. Dare to do what you should do. Dare to do what you're called to do. I once asked my best friend, for instance, just to give you another example of this principle. My best friend is a theologian. He's a professor in Cambridge. And I once asked him what he would have done. What was the road not taken? What would he have done if he hadn't been a professor of classics, of theology rather? And he immediately answered, I'd have been a businessman. But he has got it again, because he has built a new department in his university, he has collected money, he has been around dealing with business people, and he's wonderful at it in getting funds for theological research and so forth. So once again, you get everything if you follow and dare to follow your vocation. But whatever you choose, it seems to me that we all share one thing, and people who deal with the terminally ill tell us over and over again that we all share a vocation of love, and the people who are terminally ill always tell us that what matters most to them, looking back on their lives, is loving and the people they have loved. I think that is at the heart of everything, so that all vocations in a way are an expression of that love. I think this came home to me very clearly for the first time in 1987. I had something called pericarditis, which is the bag of your heart gets an infection. You can die very quickly of it if you're not got. It's not very serious if you're got in time, but I was rushed into intensive care and I got an awful fright. And when I came out, I think I was aware in a new way, completely new way, of how important this loving is. How important it is, really what counts in our lives is how we've loved, how we've served other people. So I want to conclude by reading from, just let me explain a little bit before. I'm going to read just two parts of the poem, which is a longer poem, and a title poem of the Book of Nine called Our Double Time. Let me just say a word about what I mean by our double time. I think I was enabled by this realization about putting loving at the heart of life. I was enabled to actually enjoy life in a new way, to face up to the fact that we're finite, to face up to the fact that we all die, but that we will be measured in our loving. And I talk about doubling time because I think when you have made that realization, you can not only live in the moment, not only just taste every moment, but you can savor every moment. And in that sense, you're doubling time. So I'm just going to read two sections from this poem and conclude with that. Our double time. A morning leaving hospital. Suddenly the height, the breadth, the depth. Autumn of my overhaul when senses seem to double. Rilke was right. Some fruit in me keeps ripening for a mellow fall. Scalpel and needle of growth, a womb's suture. etched wonder of what's both brittle and finite. Two girls linking arms, so full of the future, the unbearable joy of a Schumach's crimson light. Had I been too busy to notice all this before? Too concerned to catch the obvious rhyme? Everything vibrates, a voice, a scent, a colour, charged and marvellous, everything in double time, to have been to the edge, just to be allowed return, to moments of utter in-loveness, utter unconcern. Here is my life. These my friends and voices, no fixed measures, just moving with a word as though I belong in counterpointed noises, one of those fervent motets of William Byrd. Across all the eons, my one humming breath, poised in this motet, steady, even sublime. To think this year would have been my 50th. From now, every single moment are double time. Not that I've grown blasé or no longer care, more a deeper listening to a music's densities. No matter how, no matter where, the feel of a line sung with consummate ease. I love and am loved. All my tininess rejoices that I have been a voice among your voices.